He gave her everything, private jets, a $4 million ring, even a second chance at life. But 42 minutes after pouring her a glass of 1996 Chateau Margaux, he was found dead. Shot twice in the chest. Once in the back. Was it love, or a long con? This is a story of wealth, seduction, betrayal, and a murder that shocked the nation. Hit that subscribe button if you love real crime stories that leave you questioning everything. He was 66. A man whose life had been paved with oil, concrete, and contracts worth millions. Gregory Stone didn't just build a fortune, he built a legacy, one that spanned decades, weathered economic crashes, and turned small towns in Texas into oil-rich empires. People knew his name. Some respected it. Others feared it. But no one ignored it. He was a commanding presence, private jets, bodyguards, estates tucked behind iron gates, and a reputation for doing things his way. When he met her, everything changed. She was 27. Young, stunning, magnetic. Elena Marie didn't walk into a room, she commanded it with the quiet confidence of someone who'd been watched her entire life. A former model with a degree she never used, an Instagram following that doubled every few months, and eyes that could make a man forget the room he was standing in. Their paths crossed at a charity gala in downtown Houston. Cameras flashed, glasses clinked, and within minutes, Gregory Stone, once known for his steel nerve in boardrooms, was offering her champagne like a teenager on his first date. Less than a year later, she was his wife. They married in Capri. Private ceremony. Guests were flown in on chartered jets. White orchids, champagne towers, a string quartet. The oil mogul and the influencer, an odd match on paper, but to those in attendance, the age difference melted away beneath diamonds and designer suits. He was happy. Maybe for the first time in years. And he made sure the world knew it. But then came the dinner. July 14th. The night began with laughter echoing through their stone mansion, an estate that stretched over 6 acres, with staff on call around the clock. A long mahogany table, set for 2. Candles flickering. Imported wine breathing beside a carefully prepared meal. Gregory had requested the chef make her favorite. No one knew why he insisted on serving her himself. That detail would stick with the housekeeper later, how carefully he arranged her plate, how he paused outside the kitchen as if rehearsing. By morning, he was dead. Shot once in the chest. The room was cold. The security system had been disarmed. There were no signs of forced entry. No broken locks. No shattered glass. Just him, slumped in the chair where he once signed million-dollar oil contracts, his hand outstretched toward a glass of wine he never drank. Elena made the 911 call. Her voice trembling, her words stumbling over each other. He's not moving. I think he's dead. Please. Paramedics arrived within minutes. But he was gone. The staff were questioned. The security tapes were reviewed. The headlines exploded. Oil magnate found dead in home. Young wife speaks out after husband's death. The story flooded every news outlet, every social feed. Public shock turned into speculation. How could this happen? Who would want him dead? And why did it happen that night? Police began digging. And it wasn't long before the image of the grieving widow began to crack. There were texts. Deleted, but recovered. A man's name, one no one expected. Late-night messages. Frustrations. Plans. And then, what no one was ready for, one message, timestamped just hours before Gregory's death. He's serving me tonight. It's done. What exactly did she mean by that? The autopsy report arrived days later. What it revealed unraveled everything. And suddenly, it wasn't just a tragic death. It was a planned execution. Welcome to the story of Gregory Stone. A man who gave his wife the world. And paid for it with his life. The poison worked quickly. According to the coroner, it entered Gregory's bloodstream within 15 minutes. It wasn't a substance you could buy at a drugstore. This was specific. Rare. Only traceable through forensic testing most labs wouldn't even think to perform unless told exactly what to look for. And even then, the dosage had to be perfect, just enough to weaken him, slow his reflexes, muddle his thinking. But not kill him. Not immediately. That part was left to the bullet. Investigators concluded he was shot while still alive, but barely conscious. Which meant the killer had looked him in the eyes, or what was left of them, as he slipped between worlds. And pulled the trigger. The wine glass told a story of its own. Crystal. Monogrammed with their initials. A wedding gift, part of a set they'd never actually used. Only one glass had her fingerprints, smudged around the rim, her lipstick perfectly marked in the forensic photos. His. Clean. As if he reached for it, but never made it. And the staff? They remembered something odd that night. The chef, Miguel Santos, was the first to mention it. I don't know why he wanted to serve her. He always let us handle that, Miguel told detectives. But he told me to leave early. Said he wanted the night to be just them. Miguel left at 7:42 p.m. The housekeeper, Claire, left 15 minutes later. The security guard, Thomas, clocked out at 8 o'clock sharp. He wasn't supposed to, but Elena insisted she felt safe. It's date night, she'd said. Just me and my husband. We'll be fine. By 8:17 p.m., the house was silent. And by 9:03, Gregory Stone was dead. Detectives scoured the home for signs of intrusion. Nothing. No evidence of a break-in. No signs of struggle. It all pointed in one direction, from inside. Elena's story changed more than once. At first, she claimed she'd gone to bed early. Said she had a headache, took something to sleep. Said she woke up and found him like that, slumped over in his office, blood on the floor. She was shaking during the first interview, tears smeared across her cheeks. But two things unraveled her alibi. First, the timeline. The housekeeper, Claire, remembered seeing Elena walking through the hallway in heels long after she claimed she'd gone to bed. She wasn't dressed for sleep, Claire said. She was dressed like she was going somewhere. Investigators later discovered security footage of her pulling her car out of the garage around 9:15 p.m. The system had been manually disabled before she returned. Second, the phone. A second phone, not listed in her name, was found buried in the back of her closet. The text history was damning. One contact listed only as A. And the messages? They painted a story far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. He said he's changing the will. I don't trust him. It has to be soon. He's getting suspicious. After tonight, I'm free. The number belonged to Andrew Knox. A 34-year-old fitness trainer with a record, fraud, assault, and a sealed juvenile file that prosecutors later fought to open. They'd met at a luxury wellness retreat in Costa Rica during a solo trip Elena took 5 months before the murder. Staff remembered how close they got, how he seemed to be more than just a trainer. And how she left early, without explanation. Andrew disappeared days after Gregory's death. Surveillance footage caught him boarding a flight to Tulum. When authorities finally caught him 3 weeks later, he was holed up in a rented villa under a fake name. He claimed innocence. Said they hadn't spoken in weeks. Said he didn't even know Gregory had died. But his phone said otherwise. Deleted photos recovered from his cloud backup showed Elena, smiling, dressed in the very same gown she wore that night. In one image, she was holding a wine glass. Behind her, faintly blurred, was Gregory. The background matched the study. He'd been alive when that photo was taken. Andrew cracked under pressure. During a midnight interrogation, after 12 hours in custody, he asked for a cigarette, and then he asked for a deal. She told me he had cancer, he said. Said he was dying. Said she didn't want to wait another year just to be left with nothing. Said she gave him the life he wanted. She earned that money. He insisted he didn't pull the trigger. Claimed Elena planned it all. That she'd researched the poison herself. That she told him the password to the safe, the location of the backup hard drives, and even how to disable the house alarm without triggering the cloud. She was never scared of him, Andrew added. She was scared she wouldn't get to him before the lawyers did. Investigators confirmed Gregory had been diagnosed with late-stage pancreatic cancer. Less than a year to live. But he hadn't told Elena. He'd only just begun the process of altering his will, one that, at the time of his death, was still unsigned. What shocked everyone was the contents of the draft. The updated will removed Elena entirely. Everything, his estate, his cars, the business, was being put into a trust managed by his daughter from a previous marriage. He was planning to tell Elena the following Monday. The night she killed him was the Friday before. The trial began on a rainy morning in late October. The courtroom was packed, press lined every bench, true crime podcasters in the back row, and a camera crew granted limited access under strict court rules. Elena wore a black suit, hair pulled into a bun, makeup pale. Her defense team argued mental abuse, manipulation, and trauma. Claimed Gregory was controlling, cruel, dismissive. Said she felt trapped. Said the shooting was in self-defense after he became violent. But the forensic evidence didn't support that story. No bruises. No signs of struggle. No defensive wounds. Only one shot. Clean. Precise. Through the heart. The prosecution painted a different picture, of a woman who seduced a dying man, spent his money like water, and when she realized she wouldn't get it all, killed him. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty. First-degree murder. Sentence, life without parole. She showed no emotion as the verdict was read. Reporters followed her exit as she was led away in cuffs. One camera caught her whispering something to herself. The audio was grainy. But lip readers said she mouthed just 2 words. He knew. Today, the estate is tied up in litigation. Gregory's daughter has filed a civil suit against Elena's trust. The mansion sits empty, gated, guarded, a modern castle that watched its king fall to a queen who never planned to stay loyal. Elena now resides in Gatesville Correctional Facility. She gives no interviews. Declines media requests. But once, in a leaked letter to Andrew, she wrote. They don't understand what he did to me. What I had to do to survive. He served me the life I thought I wanted. And I served him back what he deserved. You've heard the evidence. You've followed the trail of poison, betrayal, and blood. But there's one question left. Was this premeditated greed? Or poetic justice from a woman pushed too far? Drop your theory in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might just be darker. There was something cold about the way Elena adjusted to prison life. Within just a few weeks of her sentencing, she'd already established a quiet dominance inside the Gatesville Correctional Facility. Not through violence. Not through fear. But charm. The same disarming charm she used at charity galas, yacht parties, and cocktail dinners beside billionaires. Inmates said she walked through the yard like she still owned something. Like the world outside hadn't ended, just shifted zip codes. Guards took notice. She was always polite. Never raised her voice. She kept to herself but listened closely. She began reading legal books in the library, property rights, trust laws, even a binder on post-conviction appeals. It was as if she still had a plan, as if this wasn't the end for her. Only an intermission. Then came the book deal. A publisher from New York reached out to her attorney just 2 months after the trial. They wanted her story. Her version. A confessional memoir titled The Trophy Trap, My Life with Gregory Stone. The offer. 7 figures. All of it funneled into a private literary trust she'd set up the month after the murder. A move her legal team insisted had nothing to do with the crime. Just smart estate planning. But the backlash was immediate. Victim advocacy groups called for the deal to be blocked. Gregory's daughter filed an injunction. The state reviewed whether Texas Son of Sam laws, designed to prevent criminals from profiting off their crimes, could apply in her case. The media lit up again. The trial may have been over, but the war wasn't. And then, something strange happened. A podcast episode aired. Not from a big network. Just a local crime blogger in Houston, Marla Kinsey. The episode was titled The Second Wife, the one before Elena. And it changed everything. Marla dug up old court documents, sealed arbitration agreements, and whispers buried deep in the backlogs of Houston's elite circles. Her theory. Gregory had a history. Not just of power, but of control. A string of short-lived relationships with much younger women. NDAs. Out-of-court settlements. One in particular stood out, a woman named Delilah West. She was 25 when she met Gregory. Beautiful. Quiet. Vanished from the public eye in 2016, 2 years before he met Elena. Her final message to a friend read. He's not what he seems. If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. Delilah was never reported missing. Her family said she cut contact. But they never saw her again. No body. No investigation. No closure. Marla's podcast caught fire. Suddenly, the internet was buzzing. Was Gregory Stone hiding a darker past? Was Elena truly a manipulative gold digger, or the only one who fought back? New threads emerged. A former housekeeper from Gregory's Florida estate came forward, anonymously, claiming she once found blood on a guest room pillow and was told to keep quiet and keep working. A former bodyguard hinted at nights where Gregory didn't look like himself. Alcohol. Pills. Screaming matches behind locked doors. Elena's legal team seized the momentum. Filed for an appeal based on mitigating circumstances previously undisclosed. They wanted to introduce Gregory's history of coercion, manipulation, and alleged abuse into the record. The court rejected it. Not enough evidence. Too speculative. But the public opinion? It started to shift. The man who was once hailed as a titan of industry was now being re-examined through a different lens. Magazine covers went from Black Widow Trophy Wife to Did She Snap? Even in prison, Elena knew. The outside world was cracking. And then came the video. A backup server from Gregory's main office had remained untouched during the original investigation, buried beneath routine files, invoices, oil field data. But a digital forensic analyst, hired by Gregory's daughter to clean up old assets, stumbled on a hidden folder. The file was simply named, private_CAM_031. It was grainy. No audio. Dated 3 months before Gregory's death. It showed Elena in the study. She was pacing. Crying. Gregory entered the frame. He was yelling, wild hand gestures, aggressive posture. He grabbed her arm. She tried to pull away. He pushed her against the wall. She slid to the floor. The footage ended there. The video was leaked. No one claimed responsibility. Overnight, the narrative shattered. The woman once convicted as a ruthless killer was now, possibly, a victim of long-term abuse. Her sentence wasn't overturned, but public support grew. Documentaries were announced. Think pieces poured in. A movement began. Not for her innocence, but for understanding. A former prison counselor, under condition of anonymity, revealed Elena had once said during a session. "He didn't die because I hated him. He died because I thought I was next." She never said it again. The years passed. Appeals failed. Elena remained in Gatesville. But she became something different. Not just an inmate. Not just a killer. A symbol of the blurred lines between survival and guilt, trauma and vengeance. Gregory's legacy fractured. The business was sold. The mansion demolished. And the only place their story remained intact, was in a locked evidence room, on a single crystal wine glass. One clear fingerprint. One blood-stained chair. One decision that changed everything. Now it's your turn. Was Elena a manipulative young wife who killed for greed? Or was she a woman trapped, cornered, and desperate to reclaim control of a life she never truly owned? Comment below. What's your truth? And if you think this story was wild, wait till you hear the one where the pastor's mistress turned out to be his own daughter-in-law. Subscribe. We're just getting started. 3 years passed. 3 years of cold meals, fluorescent lights, and the silence that only comes after everything has been said and none of it has mattered. Elena's name still floated through headlines now and then, whenever a slow news cycle needed a jolt or a fresh documentary trailer dropped. But inside, behind those razor-wire fences, her world had shrunk to cement and schedules. Then, in late October, just as the Texas wind started turning sharp and dry, someone new arrived at Gatesville. Her name was Nadine Cortez, a former journalist turned inmate, serving 6 years for embezzlement and fraud. She wasn't like the others. She wasn't interested in gangs or commissary politics. She was interested in stories. And Elena? She was the ultimate one. Nadine approached cautiously. Not in the yard. Not in the cafeteria. She waited until a library shift aligned. She slid a paperback across the table and whispered, "You ever thought of telling it right?" Elena looked up. Not surprised. Just tired. "I already did," she said. "No. You told what they let you tell," Nadine replied. What followed was weeks of quiet conversation. At first, cautious. Then confessional. Nadine had questions the media never asked, the court never explored. Like what happened on the second honeymoon Gregory never announced. The one where they flew to Italy for peace after an ugly argument about her spending. Or why Elena's hairline showed slight scarring, later revealed in a medical report, consistent with trauma. Why neighbors reported strange noises months before the murder but no police report was ever filed. And then there was the letter. Found in a hollowed-out book Elena kept in her cell, folded neatly behind a page of Anna Karenina. It wasn't addressed. But it read like a goodbye. "If anything happens, know I tried. I did everything I could to be what he wanted. To love him, fear him, worship him, escape him, all at once. I told myself the silence would protect me. But silence is how I disappeared." Nadine didn't ask why she wrote it. She only asked, "Why didn't you leave?" Elena's answer came slow. "Because he could afford to find me. And make sure no one else ever did." It was more than a prison friendship. It became a collaboration. Nadine began typing late at night in the library, quietly building a manuscript. Elena dictated memories. Not just of Gregory. But of the woman she used to be. The manipulation that crept in disguised as luxury. The cold dread that grew louder every time he complimented her with a grip too firm, a smile too thin. They called it obedience in pearls. But before the final chapter was written, Nadine was released. She left with a promise. "I'll finish it. I'll t." Elena was no longer just a femme fatale in tabloid headlines. She became the face of a different kind of case, one where the abuser wore Armani and the victim wore Dior. But the ripple effects didn't stop there. A cold case unit in Tampa, Florida reopened the investigation into Delilah West, the missing woman from 2016. With new funding and public interest, they searched Gregory's former yacht. A tiny compartment, rusted shut in the engine room, revealed a single heel. Custom. Traced to Delilah. DNA found in the lining. It was hers. Gregory, long buried, suddenly became the suspect in a murder that had gone unanswered for nearly a decade. Elena's attorneys filed again. This time, not for an appeal, but a resentencing hearing. The argument? She was never given the full scope of self-defense. Her legal counsel had been denied access to relevant abuse records and character testimonies from Gregory's exes, some of whom had remained silent out of fear. Now, they were ready to speak. In the courtroom, Elena stood differently this time. Not in designer heels. Not behind glass. Just a woman with a hollow voice, describing what it meant to be owned. One ex-girlfriend described Gregory locking her out of their home during a winter storm because she disrespected him by wearing flats instead of heels. Another recounted being left on a boat in the middle of the Gulf after she said no to a marriage proposal. She was rescued 11 hours later. The judge listened. The gallery was packed. And then, the ruling came down. Her sentence was commuted. Not overturned, but reduced. 10 years. With time served and good behavior, she would be eligible for parole in less than 18 months. The reaction was divided. Some saw it as justice correcting itself. Others saw it as privilege again escaping full accountability. But Elena? She didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. She simply walked back to her cell, sat on her bed, and whispered, "He doesn't win." Her parole hearing was broadcasted privately but leaked by a court clerk. In it, she recited the last line of the letter she once hid behind Anna Karenina. "Freedom, if I ever get it, will not be a reward. It will be the aftermath of survival." Today, Elena Monroe is 32 years old. She lives in a small town in Arizona under a new name. She volunteers at a women's shelter. She never remarried. Never re-entered the public eye. But sometimes, late at night, she emails Nadine one sentence. "We don't disappear anymore." And maybe that's the real end to this story. Because sometimes, true crime isn't just about guilt or innocence. It's about what we miss when we're too busy pointing fingers to see the full picture. So, what do you think? Was justice finally served? Was Elena a murderer, or a woman who ran out of choices? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And remember, the most dangerous predators aren't the ones that chase you in the dark. They're the ones that kiss your forehead and whisper that you're safe. Until next time, stay alert, stay curious, and stay human. But the shadows of a story like this never truly leave. Even with Elena living under a new name, behind the dusty veil of a quiet desert town, her past found ways to echo through her present. It began with a letter. Not handwritten. Typed. No return address. Just one line. "We haven't forgotten who you are." She received it at the shelter's front desk, delivered in a plain envelope with no postage, meaning it had been dropped off in person. The staff brushed it off as a prank. But Elena knew better. That tone, that veiled warning, was the kind of thing Gregory used to whisper in her ear, back when threats were love letters and control came dressed as concern. She didn't tell anyone at first. She just stopped walking to work alone. Changed her grocery routine. Moved apartments. Again. But then came the second message. This time on her windshield. Scrawled in lipstick. "You only got out because he's dead." That's when she called Nadine. Not crying. Not frantic. Just quiet. Heavy. She said the words carefully, like saying them too loud would give them more power. "They're watching me." Nadine flew in the next day. And just like that, the story started unraveling again. They filed a report, of course. But without physical harm or a known suspect, the police couldn't do much. They recommended a restraining order, against who, they didn't know. So Nadine started digging. She reached out to old names, former acquaintances of Gregory Monroe. A bartender in Miami. A former driver in Dallas. A club manager in Vegas. Slowly, a new name kept surfacing. Silas Monroe. Gregory's nephew. A quiet heir to the family fortune. Never in the limelight. But always in the background. He'd been cut out of the will when Gregory married Elena. At the time, the tabloids claimed it was due to substance issues. But what Nadine found was far darker. Silas had been charged, but never convicted, in the suspicious disappearance of a former girlfriend in 2011. No body. No crime scene. Just a missing woman who told her sister, he's worse than his uncle. And now, Silas was funding a new company. A private security firm. Based out of Tucson, less than 90 miles from where Elena now lived. Coincidence? Maybe. But Nadine didn't believe in those anymore. They went public again. Not with another book, this time, a podcast. The Widow's Ghost. Season 1, The Man After the Man. The podcast laid out everything, the timeline of Gregory's murder, the suppressed evidence, the resentencing, and now the strange new threats. It climbed the charts within a week. Episode 3, The Nephew Nobody Knew, named Silas directly. That's when the real heat began. Their apartment was broken into. Nothing stolen, just papers scattered, photos shredded, and one word carved into the bedroom mirror. Liar. Still, Elena didn't run. Not this time. She and Nadine began documenting everything. Surveillance footage. Phone logs. Email records. They built a case the way journalists do, brick by careful brick. Until one night, they received a USB drive in a manila envelope. No note. Just a single video file. What played was night vision security footage. A man, tall, lean, face obscured, planting the letter on Elena's windshield. The camera wasn't theirs. It was from the neighboring building, meaning someone else had been watching the watcher. But it was the second clip that broke everything open. Same figure. Same gait. But this time, the video showed him meeting with a man in a suit, at a private airstrip. The timestamp? 2 weeks before the threats began. The suited man? A former associate of Gregory Monroe's estate lawyer. Suddenly, it was clear, this wasn't just obsession. It was revenge. A quiet campaign to discredit Elena, to terrify her, maybe even drive her to a second breakdown, one that would stick this time. Because for men like Silas, erasing a woman didn't always mean burying her. Sometimes, it just meant making sure no one ever listened to her again. But he underestimated her. Again. Nadine handed everything over to a federal contact, a woman she'd once helped with an expose on corruption in the Department of Corrections. The investigation moved fast. They traced the car, the airport logs, and eventually the financial trail. It ended in a sting operation. Silas Monroe was arrested in March of 2025 for felony stalking, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. Inside his rented house, they found a wall of photos of Elena, tracking her every move. And a folder labeled simply, "Property I Should Have Inherited." At the sentencing, Elena didn't testify. She didn't have to. The prosecutor read a statement on her behalf. "I used to think silence was safety. That if I just stayed quiet long enough, I could make them forget me. But men like this, like Gregory, like Silas, they don't forget. And they don't forgive women who walk away. But I've learned something. Every time I speak, I take something back they stole. My story. My voice. My life. Silas got 20 years. Elena didn't celebrate. She didn't cry. She just breathed. Deeper than before. Today, she's working on a memoir. Not about the murder. Not about Gregory. But about what happens after the cameras stop rolling. After the headlines fade. It's called Permission to Be Alive. And Nadine. She launched a foundation in Elena's name. It helps women escape high-control relationships masked by wealth and charm. They've helped nearly 300 women relocate, rebuild, and reclaim their autonomy. Sometimes, late at night, Elena still feels the weight of it all. Was she a murderer, or a survivor with no other choice? Drop your theory in the comments. And if this story moved you, don't just share it. See the woman inside it. Because too many stories like this end in silence. And silence is no longer an option. If this story made you feel something, shock, anger, heartbreak, or even hope, don't keep that feeling to yourself. Drop a comment below. Do you believe Elena was justified? Was justice truly served, or was she just another woman pushed too far? Hit that like button if you think more people need to hear stories like this, raw, real, and unforgettable. Subscribe if you're drawn to the truth behind the headlines, and want more deep dives into cases that demand to be seen. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded, power doesn't protect you, money doesn't mean innocence, and silence is never the end of the story. New episodes every week, and every time you watch, you're helping give a voice to the ones who never got to speak. Stay safe. Stay aware, and never stop asking the hard questions.